On today's show,
everything is happening. We will grade the biggest deals from today's first day of crazy free agency.
does Whiteside deserve a $24 million raise? Does DeRozan's contract hurt Toronto? And will Noah work in NY?
Yes, we'll hit them all. Chandler Parsons to the Grizzlies, Mozgov to the Lakers, and so much more.
It's Friday, July 1st. The Starters free agency roundup starts now.
Good evening, Sweet World, and welcome to the Starters. Whether you're listening to the podcast or joining us live right now on NBA TV or a little bit later on YouTube, we're happy to have you. I'm J.E. Skeets, and alongside me, as always, that's Tess Mellis.
There's nothing free about this free agency.
It's right. It's the international man of mystery taking it to the max. Deal. Lee Ellis.
Friend.
Lele. And last, certainly not least, it's over there. Starters blog editor, Trey Kirby.
Hey-o!
Hey-yo! TK, what do you got?
Guys, I'm here at the internet looking for your best tweets at #TheStarters. And at this point, we've seen a ton of free agency announcements, whether it be via press release, maybe on Twitter, maybe on Instagram. But the best announcement by far has to be Hassan Whiteside, who announced his signing on Snapchat. It started last night when he posted, "Free agency decision coming soon on Snap."
Yeah.
And people got excited. And apparently it bugged him because then he snapped, "I'll post in the morning. Go to sleep, people. Relax." But then he finally made his announcement.
Hey, cuz, where you gonna sign? Miami.
Where is he going? No one knows. But that's a perfect use of the Will Smith classic Miami. And it brings us to today's question. How would you announce your free agency signing? Send us your best answers at #TheStarters, and we'll hear from you a little bit later.
All right, get your tweets in. We've got so much to get to. I know I say that on every show, but I actually am lying every show. We have so much to get to today. We're going to grade some of these deals because it's been a very busy day of free agency news. Let's start with one that we just learned about some 20 minutes becoming live on the air here. Dwight Howard was said to have had a good meeting with the Hawks today, and whoever said that, they weren't lying, because according to The Vertical, Dwight has reached an agreement on a 3-year, $70.5 million deal with Atlanta. He is headed home to Georgia. Here are our grades. B+ from Taz. Lee and Trey say B. I'm going with the grade that I got a lot in school. Straight up incomplete. But
Right.
why you guys
Turn in your
loving it?
assignments, man.
Yeah, I never did.
I'm going B+ because I've always been a Dwight backer. I believe in him. I think Mike Budenholzer will use him in Atlanta. He'll be a happy Dwight. We'll see that cheerful Dwight back on the court. Last year in Houston, I don't think you can judge anyone's character in that locker room. That entire locker room just didn't play all that hard. I think Dwight will pay off. $23 million for the next 3 years, over the next 3 years, each of the next 3 years, is entirely fine for me. I think he is such a capable guy. He does everything you need in terms of being a center. I think we'll talk about him as an all-NBA center at the end of this year.
Well, I don't think he can quite get back to that level after one season, perhaps after a couple of years in Atlanta. Defensively, he can still be a very,
that's
very
what I mean.
impactful player.
He's not going to score 20.
But there are questions about his offensive game that he hasn't answered, and he hasn't allowed himself to develop a strong offensive weapon. Now, as he's getting on in his career, his athleticism is declining a little bit.
Yeah.
He's not quite as athletic and explosive as he was. Injuries and just playing does that to you. But if he can be the right guy in a pick-and-roll situation offensively, he can be a very, very effective guy. When he gets into low post, he hasn't been able to show that he can develop that game so well. So I think it's not bad from the Hawks, though. 3 years, not a bad commitment, $70 million. In this climate, that's not too bad.
Yeah, that's true. As we're going to see here, there's a lot of crazy deals going around today. I do give it an incomplete, though, because I want to know whether or not Al Horford is staying with the Hawks. If Al Horford is still in the mix here, I actually really like it. I love the idea of Horford playing the 4 there. Dwight Howard, of course, playing the 5. That's where you want Big Al, and you got still, of course, Millsap, and whether they can keep Bazemore. I'm incomplete because we just don't know what this team really still is.
Yeah.
Dwight by himself, let's say Bazemore and Horford leave, then it's not as sexy to me. But with those guys, they look like a pretty good team in these.
My huge question is, this is a win-now move. Why trade Jeff Teague for the number 12 overall pick if you're going to sign Dwight, potentially sign Al Horford? It doesn't make sense to me. Jeff Teague was getting paid $8 million next year. Instead, you're going with a young player, Dennis Schroeder, at point guard. If you're going for a win-now move, one more year of Jeff Teague, why not?
Well, we'll see. All right, keeping it going here. Stick with the big guys because they got a whole lot of dough. Hassan Whiteside, as we said, he's returning to the Heat. He has the Snapchat stories there to prove it. According to multiple reports, Whiteside will sign that 4-year, $98 million deal with the Heat when the moratorium is done. That's a max contract for Whiteside. He made under $1 million last year, so nice jackpot there. We all tend to like this. Tass, A+. Trey and I go B+, Lee an A. So we're all sort of on board. Whiteside, the Heat taking a gamble on him, I guess, so to speak.
Yeah, Hassan Whiteside is a perfect player in today's NBA. A better version of Dwight Howard in terms of picking and rolling strong and blocking every single shot. I think the question with this is you get a huge raise. You go from a minimum contract to a maximum contract. Are you going to get fat?
Do you still have that fire?
Do you have it? Yeah, because Hassan Whiteside should have been in this league for a very long time. Why? He didn't have that fire. There's something going on behind the scenes. Will he revert to that? I don't think so. Just watching him play in Miami, watching him deal with the fact that he's on the bench entirely fine. I think he'll be entirely fine.
He was getting paid big bucks. We knew that. It was just a matter of who was going to pay them. I think the Miami Heat were the ones who gave him that chance and developed him well over these last 2 years, that he repaid that faith in them. He put up 14, 12, 4 blocks a game last year, led the league and shot 60%. We know he's still got parts of his game, particularly his maturity, which he did improve over those 2 years. He still needs to work on that a little bit. But I think this is a pretty good move for the Heat. You certainly wouldn't want to lost him for nothing.
The fallout from this, of course, is what does this mean for the Heat's chances with Kevin Durant, and what does this mean for the Heat's chances of trying to convince Dwayne Wade to take somewhat of another pay cut? Those are two big question marks with this team, as much of a bunch of other guys in Luol Deng and Joe Johnson and so on, Tyler Johnson.
But, you mentioned all those guys, they're generally older than Hassan Whiteside.
True.
If you're a Heat brass right now, you see this guy who's 27 years of age, we're not letting him go. There's just no reason to when somebody else would have given him that contract.
Riley has said multiple times that he was a priority. Whiteside was the number one priority. Yeah. Not even Durant, not even keeping Wade. I mean, I'm sure he wants to, but keeping the big guy, Whiteside, and in the end, it looks like they're going to get it done. All right, moving on here. DeMar DeRozan has agreed in principle to a 5-year contract worth more than $139 million to remain with Toronto. Yeah, more than $139 million, potentially. DeRozan has stated on several occasions he wants to spend his entire career with the Raps, and he's well on his way to doing that. Our report card for DeRozan signing that close to max deal with the Raps. Again, a bunch of A's, Lee a B+, a couple A minuses in there. So for the most part, it makes sense. If you were the Raptors, you couldn't let this guy leave with the success you've just had?
Yeah, I don't see why you'd let him go when somebody like the Lakers would pay him the exact same amount. My thing is, if you're a Raptors fan, and I've been one once in my career, I would want to couple this with another move, right? Because this move doesn't propel them to the top of the Eastern Conference. Masai Ujiri still has to work some gymnastics. Make another move. Trade Terrence Ross. Do something to improve the 4 spot, to improve the rest of your team. That being said, DeMar earned this money. It's cool to see him, go from a player coming out of USC. People called his last contract overpaid. Yeah, that he was overpaid.
What are they going to say now?
Underpaid, for sure.
No, it's funny you bring up that last contract, though, because that's what I think the Raptors are hoping for here, that he improves. He's only 26. It feels like he's been around forever, but he is still only 26. He's entering really his prime now. And when he got that contract extension, a lot of people said, I don't think he's worth it. He can't ball handle. He doesn't have a lot of handles, not a great passer, which was true at the time. But he got a lot better at both of those skills. And now, if you're a Raps fan, which I also am, you want him to try and add a three-point shot, try and be a little more locked in defensively. He's a gym rat by all accounts, and he's obviously has a great relationship with Kyle Lowry and the organization in general. I think they're just banking on that he can still get better, which then gets you more into that sort of close to max money.
And he's shown that he has got that mid-range game, which not a lot of guys have right now. He's very good at that, and he gets to the free throw line. But I think also timing is very important. Raptors coming off his best season, and the Raptors as a team having their best season. That's why as well I think they threw that big money at him. If they got bounced in the first round of the playoffs like they did last year, perhaps he doesn't get quite that big of an offer, but things worked out well for the Raptors. And so I think, again, he also doesn't improve them necessarily, but he keeps them about where they were. And if Ujiri can find the right guy and the right piece to add to that team, it could project them up a little higher.
All right, another shooting guard here, guys. The Wizards and SG Bradley Beal have agreed to a 5-year deal for a maximum with Beal at $128 million. The 4-year vet is coming off an injury-shortened 2015-16 season that still saw him average 17.4 points per game.
Whoa.
The report card for Beal is interesting. Tass and I go with B's. Trey an A-. Okay, that's fair. Lee Ellis with the rare A++. plus.
Must have brought a lot of apples to the teacher.
Yeah.
Bananas, actually.
What's going on here, Ellis? You're the Beal homer. You love him.
I do love Bradley Beal. I think he's a fantastic player, but I do understand that he has got some question marks about his injury status and whether or not he's injury prone. He's played an average of 62 games, basically missed a quarter of every season of his first 4 seasons. But the Wizards gave him a 5-year guaranteed deal with no contingencies, no opt-outs or anything. So I felt that they had to keep him if they want to keep John Wall long-term as well.
Yeah, it's not whether he can play. We know he's great. It's whether he's available
And if he
to
can
play.
stay on the floor, yeah.
And he might have minutes restrictions. That's why I sort of went down a little bit in that grade. How many minutes are they going to let him go? Well, we will see. All right, got to take a quick break. Up next, we'll throw some more grades on a few of today's other big free agency moves, so don't go anywhere. Welcome back to the Starters, where we're grading some of today's big free agency deals, and let's keep it going here, guys. Handsome Chandler Parsons has agreed to join the Memphis Grizzlies. The contract, 4-year deal, worth the maximum $94 million. Now, earlier in the day, Parsons received a max offer from the Blazers, but apparently he just loves barbecue, so he's going to Memphis, and he wants to play with Mike Conley and Marc Gasol. Our grades for Chandler joining Memphis: Tass a C+, Lee a C. Wow, throwing C's on this. Trey and I go B. Why are you guys, I guess, in theory, sort of down on this?
Chandler Parsons has teased me before.
Uh-oh.
I mean, he is a fantastic basketball player. The Grizzlies have been looking for a shooter seemingly forever. This is probably their best shooter since Mike Miller, who's a good shooter, but not that athletic.
Yeah, he's a good spot-up shooter, Chandler Parsons, for sure.
Yeah, and he's far more athletic on the dribble. But the last 2 years, that's why I said he teased me, he didn't finish the year. He's been injured. It's like Bradley Beal. I mean, not to the same extent that he's chronically injured, it feels like Bradley Beal is, but Chandler Parsons just hasn't been healthy. Knees that don't go well are a bad sign for an athletic wing.
Yeah, but like you're saying, Tass, the Grizzlies have needed a wing forever, and he's not really just a shooter. He can make plays off the dribble, he can pass the ball, and he's actually a notable free agent that the Grizzlies signed, which I think sends a pretty good message to the league. And he helped them get Mike Conley back, which is kind of a nice 2-for-1 deal. But I mean, the injuries are the huge concern, right? If he can't finish the seasons, then what's the point of having him around?
Yeah, let's point that out. You threw Conley's name in there, and sources say Parsons only made this decision because he wanted to play with Mike Conley. And Conley was meeting with the Mavericks, which is ironic. That's where Chandler Parsons is going from. But it sounds like Conley is going to stay with the Grizzlies. That's why I'm sort of up on this. I do like the trio of Conley, Parsons, Marc Gasol. Obviously, Zach Randolph's still in the mix, too. It's still solid. It's not a championship contender, I don't think, but it's going to be right there in the loaded West.
I just think even at this current climate of the NBA, I think they overpaid for a guy who has only played 63 games over the last 2 years. And what's a bit of a red flag for me is the Mavs didn't really fight tooth and nail to keep him either. They were almost like, okay, see you later.
Yeah,
We'll let
they
you go.
thought he wasn't a max guy, for
Yeah,
sure.
so that to me is a little bit of a concern.
When he's healthy, though, those numbers are
but
almost as handsome as him.
All right, well, moving on here. The purple and gold reportedly have agreed to contracts with free agent center Timofey Mozgov and guard Jordan Clarkson for a combined $114 million. Mozgov getting a 4-year deal worth about $64 million. Clarkson, of course, a Lakers second-round draft pick in 2014, so he's staying there. He inked a 4-year deal at around $50 million. So let's put this report card sort of together here for the Lakers day. Mozgov and Clarkson, we got a bunch of B's out there, Tass and Trey B-. I'm giving it the old LOL. And really has nothing to do with Jordan Clarkson, but Timofey Mozgov,
you're not big on him.
I'm not too big on this. No, I have to say I'm a little perplexed by it. I'm perplexed not by the $16 million per year, because everyone's getting paid. The 4 years is a little weird. For you guys are talking injuries. This guy's 29 years old, coming off knee injuries, barely played in the playoffs, and now he's going to be your starting center. I know that there wasn't a lot of options. They weren't talking to Whiteside. You knew Dwight wasn't coming back, but there were some other options in play, and they go with Mozgov. That's an LOL.
Yeah, it looks like they may be sort of bidding against themselves, but Mozgov,
They signed him 45 minutes after midnight.
Well,
so they definitely were bidding against themselves, right?
You think they were talking to him for 45 minutes? Maybe they made other calls in between.
Maybe.
I think Timofey Mozgov, just because he didn't play in the playoffs doesn't mean he's not a good basketball player. You're right. I mean, the injuries could be a problem, but he was fantastic in last year's finals. And then
2 years ago, yeah.
Yeah, and then 2015, and then didn't find a role on this Cavs team and was a little bit injured. He didn't get the minutes. He's an upgrade, though. He's a big upgrade for the Los Angeles Lakers.
Over Hibbert.
Do you like
Over
pair?
Hibbert,
Do you
over
like
whoever they have.
He doesn't pair well, though, to me, with all these young guys.
No,
and
he
Clarkson and Russell and Ingram and Randall.
He doesn't, but they do need an experienced defender there. And even though he didn't play a lot of minutes, he's been with the Cavs the last 2 years as they've gone to the championship. So he has got some experience with him. And again, they're a young team. They need someone. They need a presence down there defensively, because you look at Brandon Ingram, he could be a good offensive player, and he's a good shot blocker. But on the post, guys are going to beat him up all year. So they need someone there to help protect him.
You got the Russian bear there.
Yeah, I don't mind it. I don't mind. I think they could have done worse, the Lakers.
4 years, though.
That doesn't really matter to the
Yeah, he'll
Lakers.
be off the cap by the time their young guys are good. That's
Yeah.
fine.
All right, moving on here, guys. According to Joakim Noah's Instagram account, it is official. He's headed to the New York Knicks. I love how everyone just using Snapchat, Instagram. Let us know. The deal is reportedly for 4 years at $72 million. Noah pairs up with his longtime Bulls running mate Derrick Rose, who has made his way to the Garden. The Noah Knicks report card.
What a great photo of Joakim Noah right there.
We need like lasers behind him there, like a real school picture. But a lot of B's. I give it an A-. We're sort of all in the same ballpark here. We all think Noah still has something to give despite the shoulder injury and not playing a whole lot of games there last year.
I'm pumped to see Joakim Noah back to himself. You're going to hear that Madison Square Garden crowd pumped to watch him be pumped again.
Yeah.
I think the league is better with Joakim Noah in it. He's, just on the wrong side of 30, sure. And he did have some leg injuries a couple years ago, but he's coming off a year where he played 29 games, didn't start in Chicago, and he only had shoulder injuries. So I'm banking on the fact that he's going to be healthy. He's going to look like and feel like Joakim Noah again.
Yeah, I think his time was up in Chicago, and this could be just the fresh start that he needs. I think he'd be good defensively pairing with Porzingis, who is also a good defender, but Noah is a much better defender. And even though he's not got the prettiest offensive game, he's actually a very, very good...
Ooh, that was pretty.
That was
It's a
very
great
pretty.
passer.
Yes,
He's a great passer.
Shoot.
That's what I'm saying.
He'll never have the ball in his hands, though.
He's a very smart offensive player. He knows how to pass the ball well, and he just always hustles. He's tipping in. He's going for rebounds. He knows how to use his body and his feet.
You're worried about him not getting the ball with Rose and Melo having it?
When is he ever going to have the ball? He's going to be the fifth option every single time he's on the floor, but that's fine. You want him for his intensity, his leadership, and his defense, to have him basically yelling around while Porzingis is young, and then hopefully by the time Noah falls off completely and he's a bench guy, Porzingis is ready to be the 5.
All right, moving on here. One more here, guys. Nicholas Batum, he's going to remain with the Charlotte Hornets thanks to a 5-year deal worth about $120 million. Batum averaged 14.9 points per game, 6.1 boards in his first season with the Hornets last year, after spending, of course, his first 7 years of his career with the Trailblazers. The 5th year of the deal, by the way, is expected to be a player option. We all like this. The report card. Well done. He's gonna get like a new Nintendo game with this report card. That's what I would sometimes get. I'm giving it an A+. You guys are giving it an A. I give it an A+ simply because it's not the max, and with all these deals we're talking about, I'm amazed in a way that Batum didn't go to some other squad for a max deal, and he stays there with Charlotte.
Yeah, I think it's good for him, and I think it's good for Charlotte. He's a smart, savvy player. He can play both ends of the floor. He can run the offense if they need him to. He can spot up and hit three-pointers, and he's just a very versatile defender, good rebounder, does lots of everything for the team.
For sure. Congrats to Batum. Congrats to all these guys. These guys are rich.
Congrats.
These guys are loaded. I gotta take a break. When we come back, I got a fever. Only prescription. It's more free agency talk. Saw that on a show once. You're watching the Starters. Welcome back to the Starters. Hassan Whiteside using Snapchat to let us know he was sticking with the Heat in free agency. Well, we wanted you to tell us, how would you announce your free agency signing? Told you to hit us up on Twitter, #TheStarters. Trey, you got a few of the best answers.
Yeah, and Skeets, you're going to love this first one because the thinking idiot says, I'd ask Steve Harvey to do it, have him do an awkward pause for 30 seconds just for the fun of it.
I love Steve Harvey.
Yeah, classic move. Max says MySpace. Tom no. And I love what Moto says. I'd make a video where you dive into a pool of cash like Scrooge McDuck and then return to the surface with a team cap from the bottom of the pool. Certainly fitting for this free agency period.
How did he not break his neck when he was diving into like a pool of
When you're rich, you afford that liquid cash. It's all about liquid.
Okay, good stuff. Keep your tweets coming. How would you announce your free agency signing? Guys, few other notable official free agent signings here. We got Evan Turner agreeing to a 4-year, $75 million deal with the Blazers. Jeremy Lin is going to Brooklyn for 3 years, $36 million. Al Jefferson going to the Pacers, also a 3-year deal at $30 million per. And Andre Drummond, no surprise here, agrees to a 5-year deal worth $130 million to stick with those Pistons. That's a no-brainer, right? I mean, what is he, 22 years old, leads the league in offensive and defensive rebounding, 16 and 15. Stan Van Gundy loves him a big, just like Dwight Howard back in the Magic days. I mean,
Yeah, he has some flaws to his offensive game, but there was no way they were.
What are his flaws? Lee? Tell me his flaws.
He could improve his free throw shooting. It's a 38% career free throw shooting.
Why don't you work with him?
I'll try to. I'll try it when he's next in Atlanta. Andre, come on down. We'll work together.
Lee's going to work with Dwight Howard now that he's an Atlanta Hawk on his free throw
That's right.
shooting.
We've got
All
plenty of time.
Okay. Again, it's a no-brainer, though. You give him the money.
No, of course, yeah.
That's a lock. But we saw all this money being thrown around today. There was one that stopped us. Evan Turner got $70 million over 4 years. This guy was 10-5 last year. How can he get paid $17.5 per year? That being said, you start to think about it a little bit. It starts to make sense. He operates at the elbows and the mid-range area. CJ McCollum, Damian Lillard, the backcourt for the Blazers, they operate way outside that at the three-point line. Damian Lillard was getting doubled in the playoffs. Just get the ball the heck out of his hands. I think if Evan Turner is the guy in that mid-range to be a playmaker, you know, it resembles the Warriors a little bit. Just get the ball out of their hands, have another guy who can make plays. It's the 4 assists a game, I think, that are key for Evan Turner. 10-5, whatever, that's fine, but he's a playmaker.
I think it's sort of apparent, too, it was Evan Turner was almost the Blazers' backup plan here. We know they tried to make a move at Chandler Parsons, a guy that can do a little bit of everything. They struck out with him. He's reportedly, again, like we said, going to the Grizzlies. They looked at Evan Turner as sort of, well, he's a little cheaper. He's maybe a little worse than Chandler Parsons, but he's still
Different role, though,
similar.
yeah. But he had 2 pretty good years in Boston, actually. Those last 2 seasons, people weren't expecting to see him perform the way he did. So he kind of earned that contract.
Gonna love him in Portland, too. Very funny guy.
Yeah,
Yes,
that's
yeah.
so true. All right, gotta take one more break. When we come back, we'll recap today's biggest free agency movers and shakers. So don't go anywhere. You're watching the Starters. Back with the Starters. 5 of BleacherReport.com's top 10 free agents, in theory, are locked up, and 5 of them are staying. We see it there. Drummond with the Pistons, Whiteside with the Heat, DeMar with the Raps, Batum with the Hornets, and Beal with the Wizards. Those other 5 names still up in the air. Durant's got a lot of meetings, guys. Still got a lot of guys to talk to, but we talked about those deals we knew about early enough today on the Drop podcast in great detail, so check that out. That's on iTunes and Google Play Music. We also we gotta show you this unbelievable Starters birthday cake from Starters fan Peter. Yes, that is a cake ball version wedgie.
That's awesome.
I'm
And
going to update the wedgie
that
board.
one we should put on the board. That is unbelievable work, Peter. That's great stuff. Guys, we are off for a little bit here. We're gonna be back on Friday, July 8th, a week from today, in Las Vegas.
If we survive, we will
For
be.
Summer League, 11 straight shows live at the Thomas & Mack Center
Awesome.
following the last game from Summer League that day. So make sure you check that out. It's always a lot of fun.
Each and every night, you should come out to our show. Bring a sign. You'll get on TV.
Bring a cake.
Guaranteed, because you'll be the only one there.
You bring
What
a
kind of
cake,
facial?
you'll definitely get
What
on
kind of
TV.
facial hair are you growing this year, Lee?
I have to wait and see. Don't want to
Oh,
reveal it.
exciting!
All right, we will see you then. Thanks for joining us, folks. And remember, free agency is more expensive than ever.
Happy Canada Day, people. Embrace the night.
Happy Canada Day!